Have you ever looked into your child's eyes and felt something you couldn't explain? Not doubt, not fear, just a tiny voice deep inside your heart whispering that something wasn't right. For years, I ignored that voice. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself a mother should never question the child she loves. I was wrong, because the truth waiting for me was darker than anything I could have imagined. Welcome back to Inspired Real Events, where ordinary people meet impossible family and the quiet ones learn the loudest lessons. If betrayal, gratitude, and slow burn justice are your thing, you're in the right place. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. My name is Silva Landrum. I'm 35 years old. I live in a small town outside Nashville, Tennessee. For nearly 12 years, I believed I was raising my daughter. I packed her lunches. I wiped away her tears. I stayed awake through fevers. I cheered at soccer games. I kissed her forehead every night before bed. I loved her with every piece of my soul. And then one ordinary Tuesday changed everything. One DNA test. One impossible result. One secret buried for over a decade. My daughter wasn't switched at birth. She was replaced on purpose, and the people responsible had been watching me the entire time. This is my story, a story of lies, a story of betrayal, a story of a mother's love, and a truth so shocking that even now, telling it makes my hands shake. If you're listening, hold your loved ones close, because sometimes the people we trust most are hiding the darkest secrets, and sometimes the nightmare doesn't begin when you discover the truth. It begins when you realize someone spent years making sure you'd never find it. The first time I held my daughter, I cried so hard the nurse laughed. Not a cruel laugh, a warm laugh. The kind that says, "Yep, another emotional mom." I didn't care. After 20 hours of labor, all I wanted was to hold my baby. The nurse gently placed her into my arms. She was tiny, pink, perfect, the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Meet your daughter," the nurse whispered. My husband, Ethan, stood beside me. Tears streamed down his face. We looked at each other and smiled. Everything felt complete. Everything felt right. At least that's what I told myself, because buried beneath all the joy was something strange, something I couldn't explain. The baby in my arms didn't feel familiar. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? I've hated myself for thinking it, but mothers often talk about an instant connection, a moment where they look at their newborn and somehow recognize them. I never felt that. Instead, I felt confusion. Only for a second. Then it vanished. I blamed exhaustion. What else could it be? Days later, we brought her home. We named her Lily. She became the center of our universe. The years passed quickly, too quickly. First words, first steps, first day of kindergarten. The usual milestones every parent treasures, yet that strange feeling never completely disappeared. Sometimes I'd stare at Lily while she slept. Something felt off, not wrong, just different. Ethan always laughed whenever I mentioned it. "Silva, she's your daughter." "I know." "Then stop overthinking." I would laugh too. Because what else could I do? Lily looked nothing like me, nothing like Ethan either, but genetics are weird. Everyone said so. My mother said it. Friends said it. Doctors said it. So I ignored the questions. Years passed, then more years. Life became normal, comfortable, predictable. Until Lily turned 11, that's when everything started falling apart. It began with a school project, a simple family tree assignment. The teacher wanted students to explore their ancestry, nothing unusual. One evening, Lily sat at our kitchen table surrounded by papers. "Mom, yeah, what color were Grandpa's eyes?" "Blue." "What about Grandma?" "Green." She scribbled notes, then she looked up. "What about yours?" "Hazel." "And Dad's?" "Brown." She tilted her head. The same thoughtful expression she always had. The expression that somehow made her seem older than her age. "That's weird." "What is?" She pointed at herself. "My eyes are gray," I laughed. "So, nobody else has gray eyes," I shrugged. "Genetics," she nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Neither was I. That night I couldn't sleep. For reasons I couldn't explain, I kept thinking about that conversation. Gray eyes, no resemblance, no family traits, nothing. At 3 a.m, I found myself scrolling through old baby photos, the hospital pictures, the first day home, birthday parties, vacations, thousands of memories, thousands of moments. And yet something bothered me. A tiny detail, a detail I'd never noticed before. In the hospital photographs, Lily wore a pink identification bracelet. Every newborn had one, nothing unusual, except the numbers looked different in one picture. I zoomed in, then again, then again. My heart began pounding. The bracelet number in one photo didn't match the bracelet number in another. I stared at the screen. Maybe I was seeing things. Maybe the image quality was poor. Maybe a cold chill moved through my body, because suddenly I remembered something. Nurse who had brought me my baby after delivery wasn't the same nurse who had taken her away for testing. At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. Hospitals are busy. Staff changes happen constantly. But now the memory returned with terrifying clarity. One nurse took my baby. Another brought her back. I sat upright in bed. No, that was impossible. Hospitals have safeguards, procedures, security. No baby could simply disappear. Right. I closed the photo album and tried to calm myself. I was being ridiculous, paranoid, maybe tired. The next morning I forgot about it, or at least I tried to. 3 weeks later, Lily came home crying. Not ordinary crying, not because of a bad grade, not because of a fight with friends. This was different. Her face was pale, her eyes were red, she looked terrified. I rushed to her. What happened? She dropped her backpack. The next words changed everything. Mom, the kids at school said I can't be your daughter. My stomach dropped. What? They said I don't look like you. I pulled her into a hug. Sweetheart, kids can be cruel. But they kept saying it. Her voice cracked. They said maybe I'm adopted. I felt anger rising inside me, not at Lily, at whoever had made her cry. I held her tighter. You are my daughter. Promise. The question stabbed straight through my heart. Of course. She buried her face against my shoulder, and for the first time in years that strange feeling returned stronger than ever. Not because I doubted Lily. Never. I loved her completely. But something deep inside me whispered a question I couldn't silence. What if those children accidentally touched a truth none of us knew? That night after Lily fell asleep, I opened my laptop. I searched for the hospital where she was born. I requested archived records, just to prove I was being ridiculous, just to silence the voice, just to move on. I never imagined that request would uncover a conspiracy spanning 12 years. I never imagined powerful people would begin watching me. And I definitely never imagined I'd discover another little girl living only 30 miles away. A girl who shared my smile, my eyes, my dimples, my blood. A girl who should have been sleeping in the bedroom down the hall. And somewhere, hidden behind layers of lies, someone was desperately hoping I would never find her. But I was already getting closer. Closer than they realized. And soon, the truth would come looking for me. The email arrived 4 days later. 4 days of trying to act normal. 4 days of pretending I wasn't checking my inbox every 15 minutes. 4 days of convincing myself that I was chasing shadows. Then at 8:17 on a Thursday morning, my phone buzzed. I was standing in line at a grocery store. One notification, one email, one sentence. Your request for archived birth records has been processed. My heart nearly stopped. The woman behind me accidentally bumped her shopping cart into mine. I barely noticed. My hands trembled as I opened the message. Attached were scanned copies of hospital records from 12 years earlier. The day Lily was born. The day my life changed forever. I paid for my groceries without remembering what I bought. I drove home without turning on the radio. The entire trip felt unreal. By the time I reached the house, my pulse was racing. I sat at the kitchen table, opened the files, and started reading. At first, everything looked normal. My admission forms, labor records, doctor notes, nursing logs, nothing unusual. Then I reached page 17, a nursery transfer record. I frowned, read it again, then a third time. The form showed my newborn daughter being moved from the maternity ward to neonatal observation. That wasn't strange. Newborns were often monitored, but the time stamp caught my attention. According to the document, my baby entered observation at 3:11 p.m., then another form showed her leaving at 4:32 p.m. The problem. I remembered holding my baby during part of that time. I remembered Ethan taking photographs. I remembered a nurse bringing me lunch. The memories were crystal clear, yet the paperwork suggested my daughter was somewhere else. I stared at the screen. Maybe I remembered incorrectly. 12 years is a long time, then I noticed something else. A signature. The nurse who signed the transfer form had a name I didn't recognize. I searched through the other records. Her name appeared nowhere else. Not once. Not before. Not after. Just that single document. A strange chill crawled up my spine. I called the hospital. The woman at records sounded polite, professional, helpful until I mentioned the nurse. Then everything changed. There was a pause, a long pause, paper shuffling, keyboard clicks, silence. Finally, she spoke. I'm sorry, ma'am. What? We don't have employment records for that individual. I blinked. That can't be right. I'm only telling you what I'm seeing. Maybe she worked temporarily. Another pause. I'm sorry, Mrs. Landrum. Her voice sounded nervous now. The name doesn't appear in our historical employee database. I felt my stomach tighten. So who signed the record? I don't know. Click, the line disconnected. I stared at my phone. She hadn't said goodbye, hadn't transferred me, hadn't explained. She simply hung up. A wave of unease swept over me. For the next hour, I sat in complete silence. The kitchen suddenly felt colder, smaller, like the walls were closing in. Then another thought hit me. If the hospital couldn't verify the nurse, maybe someone else could. I pulled out an old storage box from the attic. Inside were baby books, hospital bracelets, birth announcements, photographs, memories frozen in time. I spent hours sorting through everything. Most of it was ordinary. Then I found a disposable camera. One of those cheap cameras people used before smartphones existed. I had forgotten all about it. Apparently, Ethan's mother had taken dozens of photos during Lily's birth week. Many had never been digitized. I rushed to a local photo shop, paid extra for same-day processing. Then I waited. The longest 3 hours of my life. When the photos were finally ready, I drove home and spread them across the dining room table. Picture after picture, family members smiling, tiny newborn blankets, flowers, balloons. Then one image froze me in place. A nurse stood beside my hospital bed. She held a baby, my baby. At least I thought so. I leaned closer. The photograph wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. The nurse wore a name badge. I zoomed in using my phone. The image sharpened. The name wasn't the same as the one on the hospital records, not even close. I felt my breath catch. One nurse on the paperwork. Another nurse in the photographs. Neither matched my memories. I whispered to myself, "What happened that day?" No answer came, only silence, heavy silence, the kind that settles over a room before a storm. That evening, Ethan came home. I showed him everything, the records, the signatures, the photographs, the strange inconsistencies. At first, he listened patiently. Then he laughed, not because it was funny, because he thought I was overreacting. "Silva, look at this." "I am looking." "No, really look." He rubbed his forehead. "You're connecting random dots. The nurse doesn't exist. Maybe the records were lost. The timeline doesn't make sense. 12 years ago. The signatures don't match. Administrative mistakes happen." I stared at him. His calmness felt strange, almost rehearsed. For the first time since we met, something about his reaction bothered me. A lot. Most husbands would be curious, concerned, interested. But Ethan seemed desperate to shut the conversation down. The thought lingered. Then I hated myself for thinking it. Ethan was my husband, my best friend, the father who had raised Lily every single day. Why would he hide anything? That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed, walked downstairs, made coffee, and opened my laptop again. This time I searched public records, old news articles, hospital reviews, anything connected to the maternity ward from 12 years ago. Hours passed. Nothing. Then, shortly after 2 a.m., I found a small local newspaper article. The headline wasn't dramatic, just a tiny piece buried among advertisements, but it made my blood run cold. Former hospital employee files wrongful termination lawsuit. The article mentioned a nurse, a woman named Karen Beckett. According to the report, she claimed she was fired after reporting serious irregularities in the maternity department. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed. The details were sealed. The hospital denied all allegations. Most readers probably ignored the story. I couldn't, because the date of the lawsuit was only 6 weeks after Lily's birth. I read the article 5 times. Then 10. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. What irregularities? What had she seen? And why had the records been sealed? Suddenly I knew exactly what I needed to do. Find Karen Beckett. The next morning I began searching. Social media, public databases, professional directories, anything. Most leads were dead ends, old addresses, disconnected phone numbers, abandoned accounts. Then, late in the afternoon, I found something. A retirement association newsletter, a photograph, a smiling gray-haired woman, Karen Beckett, living in a small town about 90 minutes away. My hands shook. I printed the address, folded the paper, placed it inside my purse. Tomorrow I would drive there. Tomorrow I would ask questions. Tomorrow I might finally get answers. What I didn't know was that someone had already noticed my search. Someone who had spent 12 years protecting a secret. Someone who had just learned that Silva Landrum was getting dangerously close to the truth. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she smiled sleepily. "Love you, Mom." My throat tightened. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything, more than life itself, I kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and quietly closed the door. Then I walked into the hallway and froze. A black SUV sat across the street. Its headlights were off. Its engine was running. Someone was inside, watching my house, watching my family, watching me. The vehicle remained there for nearly 20 minutes. Then it slowly pulled away, vanishing into the darkness. I stood motionless at the window, a terrible realization settling over me. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just missing paperwork. And this definitely wasn't my imagination. Someone knew I was asking questions, and they were afraid of what I might find. The next morning, I would meet Karen Beckett, and before the day was over, she would tell me something that shattered everything I believed about Lily's birth. Something so horrifying that I almost turned the car around and never looked back. Almost. I left before sunrise. The sky was still dark when I pulled out of the driveway. Ethan was asleep. Lily was asleep. The entire neighborhood was quiet, but my mind wasn't. Questions kept racing through my head. The mysterious records, the missing nurse, the lawsuit, the black SUV. None of it made sense, yet somehow it all felt connected. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. 90 minutes. That's how long it would take to reach Karen Beckett's house. 90 minutes to possibly discover whether I'd spent 12 years believing a lie. The drive felt endless. Every mile increased the knot in my stomach. Part of me hoped Karen would tell me I was wrong, that everything had a simple explanation, that I could go home and laugh at myself, but another part of me already knew that wasn't going to happen. Somewhere deep down, I felt it. The truth was waiting, and it wasn't going to be kind. Karen lived in a small white farmhouse surrounded by trees. The place looked peaceful, safe. The kind of home where secrets shouldn't exist. I parked in the gravel driveway, my heart hammered against my ribs. For several seconds, I simply sat there. Then I forced myself out of the car, walked to the front porch, knocked. No answer. I knocked again, still nothing. I was about to leave when the door slowly opened. A woman in her 60s appeared, gray hair, sharp blue eyes, a cautious expression. She studied me carefully. "Can I help you?" My throat suddenly felt dry. "Are you Karen Beckett?" The moment I said her name, something changed in her face. Just for a second, fear, real fear, then it vanished. "Who wants to know?" "My name is Silva Landrum." Silence. The color drained from her face. I watched her grip the edge of the door, hard, too hard, as if she suddenly needed support. Then she whispered words I'll never forget. "Oh my God." A chill shot through my entire body. "What?" Karen stared at me, not speaking, not blinking, just staring. Finally, she stepped aside. "You should come in." Her living room smelled like coffee and old books. Family photographs lined the walls. A grandfather clock ticked quietly in the corner. Everything seemed ordinary, yet the tension in the room was overwhelming. Karen sat across from me, hands folded, eyes fixed on the floor. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Then she looked up. "When did you start asking questions?" The directness caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" Her expression hardened. "When did you realize something was wrong?" I felt my pulse quicken. I told her everything. The family tree project, the hospital records, the photographs, the missing employee, the SUV, every detail. Karen listened without interrupting, and with every word her face grew paler. By the time I finished, she looked sick. The silence that followed felt endless. Then she stood, walked to a cabinet, removed a small metal box, returned to the couch, and placed it between us. My heart nearly stopped. Karen took a deep breath. "You need to understand something before I show you this." I nodded. "What?" Her eyes filled with sadness. "The day your daughter was born." She stopped, swallowed hard, then continued. "Something happened inside that hospital." The room suddenly felt colder. "What happened?" Karen looked away. For several seconds she couldn't speak. When she finally did, her voice trembled. "I saw a baby disappear." My entire body went numb. "What?" "I saw a newborn taken from the nursery." The words echoed in my head. Taken, not moved, not transferred. Taken. I stared at her, unable to breathe, unable to think. "That's impossible." "I know. No hospital could. I know." Her sudden outburst made me jump. Tears appeared in her eyes, raw emotion, years of pain, years of guilt, years of fear. Karen lowered her voice. "I spent 12 years trying to forget." My chest tightened. "Tell me everything." She nodded slowly. Then opened the metal box. Inside were folders, documents, photographs, notes, an entire archive, hidden for more than a decade. Karen carefully removed a photograph. My hands shook as she passed it to me. The image showed a hospital nursery. Rows of newborn Bobbies sleeping, tiny blankets, tiny hats, tiny lives. At first I didn't understand, then Karen pointed. My stomach dropped. One crib was empty, completely empty. The label attached to the crib was still visible. The photograph date matched Lily's birth date. I looked up. "What am I seeing?" Karen's voice cracked. "That crib belonged to your baby." The room spun. "No, I took that picture myself. No, the baby was gone. No." I shook my head repeatedly, refusing to accept it, refusing to believe it. Karen reached into the box again. This time she pulled out a notebook. Old, worn, faded, a nurse's journal. My personal notes. She opened to a specific page. The handwriting was hurried, messy, desperate. I read the entry. 11:43, infant removed from nursery room B, unauthorized personnel observed. Supervisor notified. No action taken. My blood turned to ice. What does this mean? Karen looked directly into my eyes. It means somebody took a newborn. The room fell silent. The grandfather clock ticked softly, 1 second, then another. My entire world felt like it was collapsing. Was it my baby? Karen closed her eyes. When she opened them again, tears were streaming down her face. I don't know. The answer crushed me. I wanted certainty, proof, something concrete. Instead, I had questions, more questions. Thousands of questions. Then why do you think it was my child? Karen hesitated. Then she reached into the box one final time and pulled out a second photograph. The moment I saw it, my heart stopped. The picture showed 2 newborn girls, side by side, wrapped in identical pink blankets. Both wore matching hats, both appeared to be sleeping. At first, they looked completely different. Then I noticed something, a birth tag attached to one blanket. Landrum, my last name. I stared at the image, then at the second baby, the child beside mine. Something felt strange. Unsettling. Karen's voice became barely audible. Those Bobbies were born 38 minutes apart. I swallowed hard. So, her next words shattered me. One of them vanished from hospital records. The air left my lungs. What? Karen pointed to the second baby. There should be documentation. I nodded. There isn't. My hands trembled. Who was she? We never found out. The room suddenly felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in. I looked down at the photograph again. 2 Bobbies. One identified, one missing, one recorded, one erased. A terrible possibility began forming inside my mind. I didn't want to say it, didn't want to think it, but I had to. Are you saying? My voice cracked. Karen nodded before I finished. I think those Bobbies were intentionally switched. The words hit like a freight train. I felt physically ill, everything blurred, the couch, the walls, the photographs, my entire reality. 12 years of birthdays, Christmas mornings. School concerts, family vacations, every memory suddenly felt fragile, uncertain. What happened to the other baby? Karen slowly shook her head. I never found out. A tear rolled down my cheek, then another, then another. I wasn't crying because I loved Lily any less. That could never happen. I was crying because somewhere out there, another little girl might have spent 12 years wondering why she never quite fit in, and neither of us knew it. Karen leaned forward. There is one more thing. My chest tightened. What? She pulled a folded piece of paper from the notebook, yellowed with age, a photocopy of a visitor log. One name had been circled in red ink. I looked at it. My pulse exploded. The name wasn't familiar, but the address beside it was, because it was only 30 miles from my house. 30 miles for 12 years. The possible answer had been practically next door. Karen's eyes filled with tears again. I always believed that address mattered. I stared at the paper, unable to move, unable to speak. Then I noticed something even stranger. Written beneath the address was a child's first name, a single word, Emma, and at that exact moment my phone rang. The sound nearly made me jump out of my skin. I looked at the screen, my blood froze. The caller ID read, ETHAN. I answered immediately. Honey, silence, then heavy breathing. Then Ethan spoke, and the terror in his voice made my heart stop. Silva, what happened? You need to come home. Fear surged through me. Why? Another pause, long, shaking, terrified. Then he said the words no mother ever wants to hear. Lily is gone. And suddenly nothing else mattered. Not the records, not the photographs, not Emma, not the hospital, not the conspiracy. Only one thing, finding my daughter before it was too late. Drive home was a blur. I don't remember leaving Karen's house. I don't remember getting into my car. I barely remember the highway. All I remember is Ethan's voice. Lily is gone. Those 3 words played over and over inside my head, like a nightmare that refused to end. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they hurt. Every terrible possibility raced through my mind. Had she been kidnapped? Had she run away? Was she hurt? Was she scared? Was she calling for me? The thought nearly broke me. I pressed harder on the gas pedal. For the first time in my life, I prayed out loud. Please, please let my baby be okay. Please, please, please. When I finally reached home, police cars filled the street. Red and blue lights flashed across the neighborhood. Officers moved between houses. Neighbors stood outside whispering, watching, worrying. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might collapse. I jumped out of the car before it stopped completely. Ethan, he rushed toward me. The moment I saw his face, I knew this was real. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking. He looked terrified. I grabbed him. What happened? His voice cracked. I don't know. Do you mean you don't know? I picked her up from school. I stared at him. Then what? We came home. His breathing became uneven. She went upstairs to do homework. I felt sick. And 30 minutes later, I went to check on her. A tear rolled down his cheek. She was gone. Everything inside me froze. No, 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 that wasn't possible. Our house wasn't isolated. The doors had locks. The windows had alarms. Someone couldn't simply take her, could they? The thought made me dizzy. An officer approached us. Mrs. Landrum, I nodded. We've searched the surrounding area. My stomach twisted. And no sign of her. The words hit like a punch. No sign, not nearby, not hiding, not wandering, nothing. I suddenly couldn't breathe. For 12 years, Lily had been the center of my world. The idea of losing her felt impossible, unthinkable, cruel. Then another thought struck me, a horrifying thought. What if this wasn't random? What if it was connected? The hospital, the records, Karen, the SUV, Emma. Someone knew I was investigating. Someone knew I was asking questions. Had they taken Lily because of me? The possibility made my blood run cold. The search continued through the night. Police officers, search dogs, volunteers, neighbors, everyone helped, everyone looked, everyone hoped. But as the hours passed, hope slowly began turning into fear. Midnight arrived, still nothing. 1 o'clock, nothing. 2 o'clock, nothing. I sat in the living room staring at Lily's school picture. The same picture that had always made me smile. Now it made me cry, her bright eyes, her crooked grin, the tiny dimple in her left cheek. I would have given anything to hear her laugh again. Anything. A sound interrupted my thoughts, a knock at the front door, sharp, sudden, unexpected. The room fell silent. Ethan looked at me, I looked at him, then another knock. 3 slow taps, my heart began pounding. An officer opened the door, nobody stood there. The porch was empty, the street was empty, the night was silent. Then the officer noticed something, an envelope, placed directly in front of the door. My entire body went cold. The officer carefully picked it up, opened it. His expression changed instantly. What is it? I asked. He hesitated, then handed me the paper. I looked down and nearly collapsed. It was a photograph of Lily, taken only hours earlier. She appeared unharmed, seated on a chair, looking directly into the camera. Tears filled my eyes. She's alive. Then I noticed the message written across the bottom, stop looking, or you'll lose both daughters. The world tilted. Both daughters, not daughter. Daughters, plural. The photograph slipped from my hands. Every drop of blood drained from my face. They knew. Whoever had taken Lily knew about Emma. They knew about Karen. They knew everything. And suddenly I realized something even worse. They had been watching me from the very beginning. The police immediately treated the note as evidence. Questions filled the house. Detectives arrived. Federal agents were contacted. Everyone wanted answers. Nobody had any. Meanwhile, I sat alone in Lily's bedroom, trying not to fall apart. The room felt frozen in time. Her stuffed animals, her books, her soccer trophies, everything exactly where she'd left it. I picked up a framed photograph from her dresser, a picture from last summer. The beach, Lily smiling, Ethan laughing. Standing beside them, a perfect family, or at least I thought we were. My eyes drifted toward the bedside table. That's when I noticed something strange, a folded piece of paper partially hidden beneath a notebook. I frowned, pulled it out, and felt my heart skip. It wasn't schoolwork, it wasn't homework, it was a drawing. A surprisingly detailed drawing, 2 girls holding hands standing beneath a tree. One girl was labeled me. The other had a different name, Emma. My breath caught. No way. I stared at the page. Emma, the same name from Karen's document, the same name connected to the missing baby. My hands shook. How could Lily know that name? Nobody had mentioned it around her, nobody. I flipped the paper over. Another message appeared, written in Lily's handwriting. I keep dreaming about her. The room suddenly felt ice cold. I read the sentence again and again and again. I keep dreaming about her. A chill crawled up my spine. Dreaming? How? Why? Nothing made sense. Then I remembered something. A conversation from months earlier. One I'd dismissed at the time. Lily had woken up crying. When I asked why, she told me about a recurring dream. A dream about another girl, a girl who looked familiar, a girl who seemed lonely. At the time, I'd laughed. Kids have strange dreams, that was all, or so I thought. Now I wasn't so sure. The next morning brought no answers. Only more fear, more waiting, more uncertainty. Then around 10 o'clock, Detective Harris entered the house carrying a folder. His expression was grim. Very grim. He sat across from us, opened the folder, and slid several photographs across the table. My heart nearly stopped. The pictures showed Lily, not recently. Over the years, hundreds of photographs at school, at soccer practice, at birthday parties, at the park, at the mall, at church, at home. Someone had been documenting her life. For years, I stared at the images in horror. Who took these? We don't know. The detective's voice was quiet. But they're all from different dates. I felt sick. Different years, different seasons, different ages. Someone had been following my daughter since childhood. The realization was terrifying. Then Detective Harris revealed something even worse. Another photograph, another child, another file. A girl around Lily's age, dark hair, gray eyes. A familiar smile. The resemblance made my chest tighten. I didn't know her, yet somehow she looked familiar, very familiar. The detective pointed to the image. We identified her. My pulse exploded. Who is she? He looked directly at me. Emma Parker. The name hit me like lightning. Karen's Emma. The missing Emma. The girl connected to the hospital. I stared at the photograph, unable to speak, unable to move. Then Detective Harris delivered the sentence that changed everything. Landrum. His voice was careful, measured, almost afraid. We found identical surveillance photographs of Emma. I felt my stomach drop. What? He nodded. The same person who monitored Lily was monitoring Emma. The room fell silent. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Because suddenly one horrifying truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't about one child. It never had been. Whoever orchestrated the switch had spent 12 years watching both girls, tracking them, documenting them. Protecting a secret. And now that secret was beginning to unravel, which meant someone was becoming desperate, desperate enough to kidnap a child, desperate enough to threaten a family, desperate enough to do something much worse. Then Detective Harris's phone rang. He answered, listened. His expression instantly changed. Shock, disbelief, alarm. He slowly lowered the phone, looked directly at me, and said words that made my blood freeze. Mrs. Landrum. What? They just found Emma. My heart leaped. Where? The detective swallowed hard. She disappeared last night too. And in that moment, I realized this nightmare was far bigger than I ever imagined. Because somewhere out there, 2 12-year-old girls had vanished at the exact same time. And someone wanted both of them, for a reason no one yet understood. The drive to the police station felt unreal. Emma had disappeared. Lily had disappeared. 2 girls, 2 families, one terrifying connection. And somewhere in the middle of it all was a secret buried for 12 years. The entire town seemed different now. Every passing car made me nervous. Every stranger looked suspicious. Every shadow felt threatening. I kept staring at Emma's photograph. The picture Detective Harris had shown me. The more I looked at it, the harder it became to ignore. There was something familiar about her, something impossible to explain. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile, the way she tilted her head. Tiny details, tiny similarities. Yet together they created a feeling that made my chest ache. A feeling that terrified me, because deep down, part of me already knew. Emma's parents arrived at the station shortly after we did. The moment they entered the conference room, my heart skipped. The woman looked exhausted. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The man beside her appeared equally devastated. They weren't strangers, they were parents. Parents whose child had vanished, just like mine. The woman approached me first. My name is Rebecca Parker. Her voice trembled. I shook her hand. I'm Silva. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then something unexpected happened. Rebecca burst into tears. Not loud tears, not dramatic tears. The kind that come from complete heartbreak. The kind that cannot be controlled. Without thinking, I hugged her. 2 mothers, 2 broken hearts, 1 impossible nightmare. For a moment, we simply stood there, holding each other, trying not to collapse, trying not to imagine what our daughters might be experiencing, trying not to imagine the worst. Several hours later, Detective Harris joined us. His face looked serious, more serious than before. That immediately frightened me. He placed several folders on the table. We found something. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. We just waited. The detective opened the first folder. Inside were hospital records, very old records. My stomach tightened. We've been reviewing archived documents connected to both births. Rebecca looked confused. What births? The detective hesitated, then carefully explained everything. The missing nursery records, Corinne Beckett's testimony, the unidentified infant, the possibility of a baby swap, every detail. As he spoke, Rebecca's face grew paler. By the end, she looked like she might faint. This is insane. Her husband nodded. It can't be true. Nobody disagreed. Because nobody wanted it to be true. But the evidence was growing, and evidence doesn't care what we want. The detective slid a photograph toward us. A hospital parking lot, an old security image, blurry, grainy, difficult to see, yet one detail stood out immediately, a black sedan, parked near the maternity entrance. The image date matched the day Lily and Emma were born. I frowned. What am I looking at? Detective Harris pointed. That vehicle appears repeatedly throughout our investigation. My pulse quickened. What does that mean? It means whoever was involved may have been planning something. The room became silent, then Rebecca whispered something unexpected. Oh my God! Everyone turned toward her. Her face had gone completely white. She stared at the photograph as though she'd seen a ghost. Rebecca, she slowly pointed. I know that car. The detective leaned forward. You do, she nodded. Her hands began shaking. I've seen it before. The room felt frozen. Where? Rebecca swallowed hard, then spoke. At the hospital. Every hair on my body stood up. What? The day Emma was born. The detective's expression darkened. Are you sure? I never forgot it. Her voice trembled. Because it wasn't supposed to be there. The room fell silent again. Rebecca looked down at the photograph, then back at us. The driver kept watching the maternity entrance. A chill moved through me. Watching, she nodded. For hours. Nobody said a word, because suddenly this didn't feel like a spontaneous crime. It felt planned, carefully planned, deliberately planned, and that possibility was terrifying. Hours later, the investigation took another turn, one far stranger than anyone expected. Detective Harris entered carrying a new file. This time his expression wasn't just serious. He looked disturbed, very disturbed. The sight immediately made my stomach knot. What happened? The detective sat down, opened the folder, and revealed several photographs. At first I didn't understand. Then my heart stopped. The pictures showed Ethan, my husband. My pulse exploded. What is this? Nobody answered. I looked again and again. The images were old, 12 years old, taken near the hospital, taken around the time of the births. My hands began trembling. No, the detective remained calm. We don't know what this means. No, Mrs. Landrum, no. I pushed the photos away. My breathing became uneven. Ethan couldn't be involved. It was impossible, absolutely impossible. Yet the photographs remained there, cold, silent, unforgiving. Rebecca stared at them. Then suddenly frowned. A strange expression crossed her face. Recognition, fear, disbelief. The combination terrified me. What? She looked at Ethan's picture, then looked at me, then back at the picture. I've seen him before. The room instantly froze. I felt my pulse hammering inside my skull. What did you say? Rebecca's voice barely rose above a whisper. I've seen your husband. The floor seemed to disappear beneath me. When? Her eyes filled with uncertainty. The hospital. No, no, no. I shook my head, trying to reject the possibility, trying to reject reality itself, but Rebecca wasn't finished. He spoke to someone. The detective leaned forward. Who? I don't know. Think. She closed her eyes, concentrating, trying to remember. After several seconds, she opened them and quietly spoke. A nurse. My entire body went numb. The room fell silent. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. A nurse, 12 years ago, at the hospital. The same hospital connected to the missing records. The missing baby, the missing identities, the missing truth. The implications were horrifying, yet something still didn't fit. Ethan had never mentioned anything, never acted suspicious, never slipped, never revealed anything, unless a new possibility suddenly appeared. One so unexpected it made me dizzy. What if Ethan didn't know he was part of the story? That evening I returned home, exhausted, confused, terrified. Every room felt empty without Lily. Every hallway felt wrong. Every silence felt painful. I sat at the kitchen table staring at old family albums, searching, questioning, remembering. Then I found something, a photograph I'd never paid attention to before. One taken shortly after Lily's birth. Ethan stood beside my hospital bed, smiling, holding flowers, completely normal, except for one detail. A man stood in the background. Partially visible, almost hidden, someone I didn't recognize. At first I ignored him, then my stomach tightened. The man wasn't looking at the camera, he wasn't looking at Ethan. He wasn't looking at hospital staff, he was staring directly at me, watching, observing, studying. The expression on his face sent a chill through my body. I quickly compared the image to the hospital parking lot photo. My hands began shaking. The same man, the exact same man. For 12 years, he had remained hidden in plain sight, a ghost inside my memories, a stranger inside my photographs, a witness to whatever happened that day, maybe more than a witness, maybe a participant. Then my phone buzzed, a text message, unknown number, no name, no explanation, just a single photograph. I opened it and felt my heart stop. It showed 2 newborn Bobbies, the same Bobbies from Karen's photograph. Only this image was clearer, much clearer. My hands trembled, because written on the back of the photograph was a message. A message dated 3 months before either girl was born. 3 months before, born. The handwriting was neat, precise, deliberate. And the words shattered every remaining illusion. The exchange will proceed as planned. I stared at the message, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to move, because one horrifying truth had suddenly become impossible to deny. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a spontaneous crime. This wasn't an accident inside a hospital. Someone had planned the swap before Lily and Emma ever entered the world, and whoever orchestrated it had just contacted me directly. Which meant they weren't hiding anymore. They were making their next move, and I feared it would be the most dangerous one yet. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. The photograph sat on the kitchen table. The message stared back at me. The exchange will proceed as planned. 3 months before Lily and Emma were born. 3 months before either child took her first breath. 3 months before I held my daughter in my arms. Someone had already decided their futures. Someone had already decided mine. The thought made me physically sick. Around 4 in the morning, I poured myself another cup of coffee. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped the mug. I looked exhausted, broken, terrified. And for the first time since this nightmare began, another emotion appeared. Anger, pure anger. Someone had stolen 12 years from 2 families. Someone had manipulated innocent children. Someone had shattered lives, and I was done being afraid. I wanted answers, no matter what they cost. The next morning, Detective Harris arrived with news. Not good news, never good news anymore. He entered carrying a sealed evidence envelope. His expression alone made my stomach tighten. "What is it?" He sat down slowly. "We traced the text message." Hope surged through me. "You found them." The detective shook his head. The hope vanished immediately. The phone was disposable. Of course it was. Nothing about this case was easy. Nothing. Then he slid a photograph across the table. The same stranger from my hospital picture. The man standing in the background, watching, waiting, the ghost from 12 years ago. We identified him. My pulse quickened. "Who is he?" Detective Harris looked directly into my eyes. His answer changed everything. "His name was Victor Hale." Was past tense, my heart sank. Was, the detective nodded. "He died 6 years ago." The room fell silent. Another dead end. Another piece of the puzzle gone forever. Then Harris continued. "But before he died, he worked for a private investigation firm." I frowned. "A private investigator?" "Not exactly." He opened the folder. My eyes moved across the documents, financial records, employment contracts, property registrations. Then one detail caught my attention. The company's largest client, a family foundation, a very wealthy family foundation. The name made my blood freeze. Landrum, my last name. For several seconds I couldn't breathe. "No." Detective Harris nodded slowly. "I'm afraid so." The room seemed to spin. My family, not Ethan's family, mine. The realization hit harder than anything before, because until that moment I'd believed the threat came from outside. Now I wasn't so sure. That afternoon I drove to visit my mother, a place I usually loved, a place that once felt safe. Today it felt different. Suspicious, uncertain. The house looked exactly the same. White porch, blue shutters, flower garden, yet as I parked my stomach churned. Questions filled my mind, questions I never imagined asking, questions I never wanted answered. My mother opened the door. The moment she saw my face, her smile disappeared. "Silva!" I walked inside, closed the door, and placed the photograph on the kitchen table. Her eyes widened instantly, just for a second, but I saw it. Fear, real fear. The sight made my blood run cold. "Mom," she didn't answer. "Do you know this man?" Silence, the worst kind of silence. The kind that tells you everything before a single word is spoken. "Mom." Her hands began shaking, very slightly, but enough for me to know. "You know him." She lowered her eyes, and in that moment part of my heart broke. Because I realized something. She wasn't surprised. Not at all. The next hour felt like a nightmare. My mother cried. I cried. Neither of us wanted the conversation, yet neither of us could stop it. Finally, she looked up and whispered something that changed my life forever. "There are things I should have told you years ago." My chest tightened. "What things?" Her eyes filled with tears. "The Landrum family wasn't always ordinary." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, then slowly opened an old wooden cabinet. Inside were photo albums, documents, letters, boxes, decades of family history. She removed one worn folder, placed it on the table, and pushed it toward me. I opened it. The first photograph made my stomach drop. A younger version of Victor Hale, standing beside my grandfather. I felt dizzy. "What is this?" My mother's voice cracked. "Your grandfather hired him." The room fell silent. My heart pounded. Why? Why would my grandfather hire a private investigator? And what did any of this have to do with Lily and Emma? The answers came slowly, painfully, like pieces of broken glass. My grandfather, Samuel Landrum, had been obsessed with family legacy. Obsessed. According to my mother, he believed the Landrum bloodline was the most important thing in the world. Money, reputation, influence, control. Everything mattered to him, everything except people. The more she spoke, the colder I became. Because the man she described wasn't a loving grandfather. He was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Someone ruthless. Someone who believed he could control lives, even lives that weren't his. Then my mother said something that made my skin crawl. "He always wanted a granddaughter." I frowned. "What?" She nodded. "Specifically a granddaughter." The room became silent. Then I laughed nervously, not because it was funny, because it sounded ridiculous. "What does that have to do with anything?" My mother's eyes filled with sadness. "More than you realize." Hours later, I left her house carrying boxes of documents. Boxes filled with secrets. Boxes filled with lies. Boxes filled with clues. I spent the entire evening reading. Page after page, letter after letter. Most of it seemed unrelated. Old business records, property agreements, family correspondence. Then I found a letter, one letter, hidden beneath dozens of others. The envelope was addressed to my grandfather. The sender's name immediately caught my attention. Dr. Michael Rowan. The obstetrician who delivered Lily. My pulse exploded. Why would my grandfather receive letters from my doctor? I opened it and felt the room tilt. The contents were brief, very brief, yet devastating. "Samuel, the medical evaluations have been completed. The situation remains exactly as discussed. The probability is extremely high. Further instructions will be required before delivery. Destroy this correspondence." MR, I read it once, twice, 3 times. My hands began shaking. Further instructions before delivery, before delivery. The words echoed through my head. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't even impulsive. It was organized, planned, structured. My grandfather and my doctor had communicated before my child was born. The realization made me nauseous. Then I noticed something attached to the letter. A folded document, a genetic report. My breath caught. I slowly opened it and instantly froze because the report wasn't about Lily or Emma or Ethan. It was about me. My eyes scanned the page, medical terminology, laboratory codes, analysis results, then one highlighted sentence, one sentence that shattered everything. Subject carries hereditary marker of significant interest. I stared at the words again and again and again. What hereditary marker? What interest? What had my grandfather discovered? And why was he willing to go to such extreme lengths? Questions flooded my mind, but before I could process any of them, my phone rang. Detective Harris. I answered immediately. "Harris." His voice sounded tense, very tense. "Mrs. Landrum." My stomach tightened. "What happened?" For several seconds he said nothing. Then he spoke, and the words nearly stopped my heart. "We found the location where Lily and Emma were being held." Hope exploded inside me. "They're alive." Another pause, long, uneasy, terrifying. Then he answered, "Yes." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I almost collapsed. For one beautiful moment, everything else disappeared. They were alive, alive, alive. But then Harris continued, and that relief instantly turned into dread. "There's something you need to know before we go in." My chest tightened. "What?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "We believe one of the kidnappers is a member of your family." And suddenly every secret, every lie, every buried truth seemed to be leading toward the same place. Home. For a moment I couldn't speak. I just sat there gripping my phone. The words echoed through my head. "A member of your family." Not a stranger, not a criminal organization, not some mysterious outsider. My family, the people I trusted, the people I grew up with, the people who shared my name. My heart felt like it was being squeezed from both sides. "Who is it?" I finally whispered. Detective Harris sighed. "We don't know yet." That answer brought little comfort, maybe none at all. Because if they didn't know who it was, then it could be anyone. A cousin, an uncle, a distant relative, someone I'd spent holidays with, someone who had smiled at Lily, someone who had hugged her. The thought made me feel sick. "We're moving now," Harris continued. "Meet us at the command center." I grabbed my keys. Within minutes I was driving. Rain hammered against the windshield. Dark clouds covered the sky. The weather felt like a reflection of everything happening inside me. Cold, chaotic, dangerous. The command center had been established near an abandoned property on the outskirts of town. Police vehicles filled the area. Emergency personnel moved quickly between equipment and vehicles. The atmosphere was tense, focused, urgent. I spotted Detective Harris standing beside a large operations trailer. The moment I approached him, I saw something in his eyes, concern, not for the operation, for me. That scared me more than anything. "Tell me everything," he nodded. Then unfolded an aerial map. The location appeared isolated, surrounded by forest, far from neighboring homes, far from witnesses, far from help. My stomach twisted. "They're inside. We believe so." "Believe," he pointed toward the building. "We intercepted communications." My pulse quickened. "From who?" "We're still working on that." I hated every uncertain answer, every maybe, every possibly, every likely. I wanted facts. I wanted Lily. I wanted this nightmare to end. Instead, Harris handed me another file. The moment I opened it, my blood ran cold. Family photographs, old family photographs, Landrum family photographs, some dated back 30 years, others older. Then I noticed something strange, very strange. Every photograph had one feature circled. Eyes, just eyes, different generations, different faces, different decades, yet every circle highlighted the same unusual characteristic. Gray eyes, Emma's eyes, my eyes. The room suddenly felt colder. "What am I looking at?" Harris took a breath. "The hereditary marker." My pulse exploded. The genetic report, the letter, the doctor, everything came rushing back. "The marker from the report," he nodded. I stared at him. "You're telling me this entire nightmare is connected to eye color?" "No," his expression darkened. "It's connected to what the eye color represents." A chill crawled through me. "Meaning," the detective hesitated, then carefully chose his words. "The marker is associated with a rare genetic trait." The room fell silent. I didn't like where this was going, not at all. "The trait itself isn't dangerous." "Then why does it matter?" Harris looked uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. "Because someone in your family believed it was." I frowned. "Believed what?" The answer sounded ridiculous, impossible, insane, yet Harris said it anyway. "Your grandfather believed the trait indicated exceptional intelligence." For several seconds I simply stared at him. Then I laughed, a sharp, nervous laugh, not because it was funny, because it sounded absurd. "You're serious?" "Unfortunately." I shook my head. "No," the detective nodded slowly. "We found letters. Letters, more letters, always letters, secrets preserved on paper, waiting for decades to destroy lives. Your grandfather became obsessed." I felt dizzy. "He thought the trait should remain within the family." The implications hit me all at once. Like a tidal wave. The pregnancies, the doctor, the planning, the surveillance, the swap, everything. My knees nearly gave out. "This can't be real." "I wish it wasn't." Before I could ask another question, a radio crackled nearby. An officer spoke urgently. Then another. Then several. The atmosphere changed instantly. The operation was beginning. Police teams moved toward vehicles. Weapons checked, equipment loaded. Commands issued. My heart pounded. "Lily, Emma, please, please be okay." I silently repeated the words again and again, as if somehow they might reach them, as if somehow they might protect them. The next 30 minutes felt like 30 years. I waited, paced, prayed, cried. Every second dragged endlessly. Then suddenly shouting erupted near the command trailer. Officers moved quickly. Radios exploded with activity. Something had happened, something big. Detective Harris received a transmission. His eyes widened. Then he turned toward me. I immediately knew they'd found something. "What is it?" For one terrifying second, he said nothing. Then, "They found the girls." My entire world stopped. Found. The girls were found. I burst into tears instantly. Pure relief, overwhelming relief. The kind that leaves you unable to stand, unable to speak, unable to think. Alive, they were alive. That was all that mattered, nothing else, nothing. 20 minutes later, an ambulance arrived. The doors opened, and I saw her. Lily, my Lily. The moment our eyes met, everything shattered. She ran toward me, I ran toward her. Neither of us cared about the people watching. Neither of us cared about the chaos around us. I dropped to my knees, wrapped my arms around her, held her so tightly I thought I might never let go. She was crying, I was crying, everyone was crying. Mom, her voice cracked. Mom, I kissed her hair, her forehead, her cheeks, anywhere I could. You scared me. She nodded against my shoulder. I'm sorry. The sound of her voice broke something inside me, a wall I didn't even know I was holding. For the first time in days, I felt hope, real hope. Then I heard another voice nearby, a girl's voice, soft, uncertain. I turned and saw Emma. For several seconds, the world disappeared, everything disappeared, because I was looking at a child I'd never met, yet somehow she felt familiar, painfully familiar. The resemblance hit me instantly, not just physically, emotionally. Something inside me reacted, a connection, an instinct, a pull I couldn't explain. Emma stared at me too, confused, curious, almost emotional. Then she smiled nervously, and my heart stopped, because the smile was identical to mine, exactly identical. Hours later, investigators questioned the girls. The information they provided stunned everyone. The kidnappers hadn't hurt them, hadn't threatened them, hadn't even treated them badly. Instead, they kept asking strange questions. Questions about school, questions about problem solving, questions about memory, questions about intelligence. As if they were conducting experiments, tests, evaluations. The entire thing felt horrifying. The more investigators learned, the darker the story became. Then came the biggest shock of all. One kidnapper survived the police raid. A woman, an older woman, she'd been arrested alive, and she was finally talking. Detective Harris entered the interview room carrying a photograph. His expression looked grim. Very grim. I immediately knew I wasn't going to like what came next. What did she say? He placed the photograph on the table. The moment I saw it, my blood froze. I knew the woman, not well, but I knew her. Family reunions, holiday gatherings, birthday parties, small moments over the years. The woman in the photograph was my aunt, my grandfather's youngest daughter, Aunt Vivian. My hands began shaking uncontrollably. No, the detective nodded. I'm sorry. No, everything blurred, the room, the walls, the table, the photograph, all of it, because suddenly memories came rushing back. Aunt Vivian always asking questions about Lily. Aunt Vivian attending every birthday. Aunt Vivian sending gifts. Aunt Vivian taking photographs. So many photographs, too many photographs. The realization was unbearable. For 12 years, she hadn't been acting like a loving relative. She'd been monitoring the girls, watching them, evaluating them, continuing my grandfather's obsession. And according to Detective Harris, she wasn't finished talking, not even close. Because during interrogation, Vivian revealed something that stunned everyone in the room, something nobody expected, something that changed the entire case. She claimed the baby swap wasn't her idea. It wasn't my grandfather's idea either. Someone else had started everything. Someone far more powerful, someone still alive, someone who had never been caught. And according to Vivian, that person was coming for the girls again, very soon. For the next 48 hours, nobody slept much. Not the investigators, not Emma's family, not Ethan, and certainly not me. Lily refused to leave my side. Every time I walked into another room, she followed. Every time I stepped outside, she wanted to know where I was going. The kidnapping had frightened her more than she admitted. And honestly, it had frightened me too. I kept waking up in the middle of the night just to make sure she was still there, still breathing, still safe, still mine. Because no matter what happened next, no matter what the DNA tests eventually revealed, one truth could never change. I loved Lily. Nothing would ever change that. Nothing. Meanwhile, Aunt Vivian finally began talking. Really talking. Years of secrets started pouring out. Some voluntarily, some after investigators confronted her with evidence. Every answer seemed to create 3 new questions, but one thing became clear very quickly. My grandfather hadn't been the mastermind. He had funded things, influenced things, protected things, but someone else had designed the entire operation. Someone smarter, someone more dangerous. Someone who understood exactly how to manipulate people. And according to Vivian, that person had spent 12 years staying hidden. Then Detective Harris arrived with the interview recordings. I sat across from him in a secure conference room. My stomach churned. I wasn't ready, but I needed answers. The recording began. Vivian looked exhausted, defeated, older than I remembered. For a moment, she simply stared at the table. Then she spoke. The plan wasn't Samuel's, my grandfather. Samuel Landrum. The name sounded poisonous now. The detective on the recording asked a simple question. Whose plan was it? Vivian closed her eyes and whispered a name. The room instantly felt colder. Dr. Michael Rowan, my doctor, the doctor who delivered Lily. The doctor connected to the mysterious letters. The doctor who should have been helping families, not destroying them. I felt sick. The recording continued. Vivian explained that Rowan had approached my grandfather years earlier. At first, the conversations had been harmless. Medical discussions, research, genetics, rare hereditary traits. Then something changed. Rowan became obsessed, dangerously obsessed. According to Vivian, he believed certain genetic markers could predict extraordinary intellectual potential. Not guarantee it, predict it. And somewhere along the way, his scientific curiosity became something darker, something personal, something twisted. He began treating children like experiments. Not human beings, experiments. The word made me nauseous. Hours later, another piece of the puzzle emerged. A sealed storage facility had been discovered. Inside were thousands of pages of records, surveillance reports, educational assessments, medical notes, psychological profiles. The sheer volume was horrifying. It documented years of monitoring. Years. The investigators spent hours reviewing everything. Then Detective Harris called me. His voice sounded different, strained, almost uneasy. Silva. There's something you need to see. I drove to the evidence center immediately. The moment I arrived, Harris handed me a file. I opened it and felt my heart stop. The file was labeled, Subject A. Below it was Lily's photograph. My hands began shaking. I turned the page, test scores, teacher observations, behavioral notes, health records, private information, every detail of her life, collected, stored, analyzed. I felt physically ill. Then I noticed another file, Subject B. Emma. Same thing, the same surveillance, the same observations, the same violation. The girls had been monitored their entire lives, not occasionally, constantly. The realization made me want to scream. Then Harris pointed toward another folder, one hidden beneath the others. No photograph appeared on the cover, just a name. ETHANLANDRUM. My blood froze. No, Harris remained silent. No, my hands trembled. No, yet somehow I already knew. The moment I saw that folder, I knew. There was a secret inside, a terrible secret, one Ethan had never told me. I drove home in silence. The folder sat on the passenger seat, mocking me, terrifying me. I didn't want to open it. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Part of me wanted to burn it, but secrets had already destroyed enough lives. I wasn't running anymore. When I arrived home, Ethan was sitting alone in the living room. The moment he saw my face, his expression changed. He knew, before I said a single word. He knew. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I placed the folder on the coffee table. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt endless. Then I asked the question. Ethan, my voice cracked. What aren't you telling me? His eyes immediately filled with tears. That scared me more than any answer, because Ethan wasn't a man who cried easily, not ever, yet now he looked shattered, completely shattered. For nearly a minute he couldn't speak. Then he whispered, I tried to protect you. The words made my chest tighten. Protect me from what? He closed his eyes, and finally told me the truth. 12 years earlier, during my pregnancy, Ethan had received a phone call, a strange phone call, a warning. Someone claimed there was interest in our unborn child. At first, he dismissed it as nonsense, a prank, a misunderstanding, something harmless. Then the calls continued. More warnings, more strange comments, more references to my family. Eventually, Ethan became frightened, very frightened. So frightened that he hired someone, a private investigator. My breath caught. Victor Hale. The man from the photographs. Ethan nodded. The same Victor Hale. Suddenly everything connected, the hospital pictures, the parking lot, the surveillance, the background appearances. Victor hadn't been watching me, at least not initially. He'd been working for Ethan, trying to identify a threat, trying to understand who was targeting our unborn child. My mind reeled. But why didn't you tell me? Ethan looked devastated. Because I failed. The answer broke my heart. He wasn't hiding the truth to protect himself. He'd been hiding it because of guilt. Overwhelming guilt. Crushing guilt. He believed he should have stopped everything, prevented everything, saved everyone. And for 12 years he'd carried that burden alone. Then Ethan revealed something even worse, something he'd never told another living person. Several weeks before Lily's birth, Victor Hale had delivered a report identifying Dr. Michael Rowan as suspicious. The doctor, the mastermind, the man behind everything. Victor believed Rowan was conducting unauthorized genetic research, Dangerous research, secret research, research involving unborn children. My stomach twisted. What happened? Ethan lowered his head. I didn't believe him. The room became silent, painfully silent, because if Ethan had believed Victor, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe. The realization nearly destroyed him. I could see it in his eyes, the regret, the guilt, the heartbreak. 12 years of self-blame. 12 years of wondering what might have been. That night, after hours of talking, crying, and remembering, I finally understood something. Ethan wasn't my enemy. He never had been. He was another victim, just like me, just like Lily, just like Emma, just like Rebecca. Someone else had manipulated all of us. Someone who believed children were property, experiments, data, numbers. And according to investigators, that someone still hadn't been found. Because Dr. Michael Rowan had vanished, completely vanished. No current address. No recent photographs, no financial activity, nothing. It was as if he disappeared from the face of the earth. Yet everyone knew he was still out there, watching, waiting, planning. Then, just before midnight, Detective Harris called again. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong, very wrong. Silva. His voice sounded urgent. What happened? We found Rowan. My pulse exploded. Where? The detective hesitated, then spoke words that made my blood run cold. He found us first. For a second, I didn't understand. Then Harris continued. Someone broke into the evidence facility. Every muscle in my body tightened. What? They didn't steal everything. The detective sounded shaken. They only took one item. My heart pounded. What item? A long silence followed, then Harris answered, and the answer changed everything. The original DNA records. The room spun. DNA records, not Lily's, not Emma's, mine. Because according to the facility inventory, the missing file contained information about a third child. A child nobody had known existed. A child connected directly to Dr. Rowan. A child born the same week as Lily and Emma. And somehow, that child was the key to everything. The words haunted me all night. A third child, not Lily, not Emma. A third child. Every piece of evidence we had uncovered pointed toward two Bobbies, two families, two lives altered forever. Now investigators were telling me there had been another child connected to the same week. Another secret, another missing piece, another lie. I sat awake beside Lily's bed until sunrise. She slept peacefully for the first time since her rescue. Occasionally, she would shift beneath her blanket, murmur something, then settle again. Every time she moved, I felt relief, because she was here, safe, alive. No matter what the truth turned out to be, she was still my little girl. Nothing would ever change that. The following morning, Detective Harris arrived with new information. His face looked pale, exhausted, like someone carrying news too heavy to deliver. The moment I saw him, my stomach tightened. What is it? He handed me a folder. No words, no explanation, just the folder. I opened it. Inside was a birth certificate, one I'd never seen before. The date immediately caught my attention. It matched the same week Lily and Emma were born. My pulse quickened. The father's name was blank. The mother's name was hidden beneath a court seal. Then I reached the child's name. My breath caught. Michael Rowan Jr. I stared at the document, then looked at Harris. His son, the detective nodded. My mind raced. Dr. Rowan had a child nobody mentioned, a child somehow connected to everything. But why? What happened to him? Harris slowly sat down, then answered. He died. The room became silent. A strange silence, not relief, not satisfaction, just sadness. The kind that follows tragedy. Even terrible people can experience loss. And somehow I knew this loss mattered, a lot. How old was he? The detective swallowed. 3 days. The answer hit harder than I expected. 3 days, just 3 days. Then gone, a baby, an innocent child, dead before he even had a chance to live. I suddenly understood why Harris looked so uneasy. This wasn't just a crime story anymore. It was a story about grief, and grief can transform people, sometimes into monsters. Hours later, investigators uncovered medical records. The details were heartbreaking. Dr. Rowan's son had been born with severe complications. Despite every effort, he survived only 3 days. Then he died. Most parents would mourn. Most parents would grieve. Most parents would slowly learn to live with the pain. Rowan didn't. According to people who knew him, something inside him broke. Completely. Permanently. His obsession with genetics intensified after the death. His research became more extreme, more secretive, more dangerous. And eventually he developed a theory that would destroy countless lives. He became convinced that certain children possessed extraordinary genetic potential, that his son should have been one of them. That life had somehow cheated him. The belief consumed him, year after year, until it became an obsession, then an addiction, then a mission. The more I learned, the more terrifying it became, because Rowan wasn't trying to become wealthy. He wasn't seeking fame. He wasn't building a criminal empire. He genuinely believed he was doing something important, something noble. That made him even more dangerous. 3 days later, the DNA results finally arrived. The results everyone feared. The results nobody wanted. The results that would permanently change multiple families. I sat inside a private conference room. Rebecca sat beside me. Neither of us spoke much. Neither of us could. The atmosphere felt unbearable. Across the room, Emma and Lily waited with counselors. They weren't children anymore. Not after everything they'd experienced. Their innocence had been damaged, not destroyed, but damaged. And that realization hurt, a lot. Detective Harris entered carrying a sealed envelope. The room instantly became silent. Every heartbeat felt loud. Every breath felt heavy. This was it. The moment, the answer, the truth. 12 years of lies ending with a single sheet of paper. Harris sat down, opened the envelope, and looked at me. His eyes softened, almost apologetically. Then he spoke. Silva, I already knew. Somehow I already knew, yet hearing it still shattered me. Emma is your biological daughter. The world stopped. No sound, no movement, no thoughts, nothing, only those words. Emma is your biological daughter. A tear rolled down my cheek, then another, then another. Across the room, Emma began crying too. Rebecca lowered her head, her shoulders shaking. The pain in that room felt impossible to describe, because nobody was winning, nobody. There were no happy victors, only broken hearts trying to survive an impossible truth. Then Harris continued. Lily is Rebecca's biological daughter. More tears, more silence, more grief. For several minutes nobody spoke. Nobody knew how. How do you react to learning that your child isn't biologically yours? How do you process discovering another child should have been yours all along? There are no instructions for that. No preparation. No guidebook. Only heartbreak. Eventually, Emma looked toward me, her eyes red from crying. The resemblance struck me harder than ever. My eyes, my smile, my expressions, tiny pieces of me reflected back. And yet she was also a stranger, a beautiful stranger, one I should have known, one I should have raised, one I should have tucked into bed, one I should have watched grow up. 12 years, gone, stolen. The loss hurt in ways I can't fully explain. Then something unexpected happened. Lily walked across the room, slowly, carefully, until she stood beside me. I looked up, through tears, through confusion, through heartbreak. She reached for my hand and whispered, "You're still my mom." The words destroyed me, completely. I pulled her into my arms, held her tightly, cried into her hair, because she was right. Biology mattered, truth mattered. But love mattered too. Love mattered most. And I loved her. I always would. That evening, investigators finally uncovered Rowan's ultimate motive. The final piece. The missing answer. The reason he ordered the switch. The reason he monitored the girls. The reason he risked everything. The explanation was horrifying, and absurd, and tragic, all at once. According to his private journals, Rowan became convinced that Emma carried the rare hereditary marker he coveted. The marker connected to my family. The marker he'd spent years studying. The marker he believed represented exceptional potential. He wanted Emma observed, studied, tracked for life. But he also feared public scrutiny. So he devised a solution, a monstrous solution. He arranged for Emma to grow up within my family circle without officially remaining there, close enough to observe, far enough to control. It was insane, utterly insane, yet that was the truth. Lives destroyed because of one man's obsession, one man's grief, one man's delusion. For the first time since the investigation began, it seemed the nightmare was finally ending. The girls were safe. The truth was known. The mastermind's motive was exposed. The families had answers, painful answers, but answers. Then late that night, Detective Harris called again, and immediately I knew something was wrong, very wrong. His voice sounded strained, almost disbelieving. "Silva, what happened?" A long silence followed, then he spoke. "We found Rowan's final journal." My stomach tightened. And another pause, longer this time, more unsettling. Then Harris whispered, "There was never supposed to be only 2 girls." Every muscle in my body froze. "What?" The detective took a shaky breath. "The 3rd child wasn't Rowan's son." The room seemed to tilt. "What are you talking about?" His answer changed everything. Again, "The 3rd child is alive." and according to the journal, that child has been searching for you. The call ended, but I remained frozen, standing in my kitchen, staring into nothing, unable to move, unable to think, unable to process what Detective Harris had just told me. The third child was alive, alive. After everything we'd uncovered, after every lie, after every secret, after every heartbreak. There was still more. I slowly sat down. My legs felt weak. Across the room, Lily was sleeping on the couch. Emma was asleep upstairs in the guest room. For the first time since the truth came out, both girls were under the same roof. Safe, protected, together. And somehow another mystery was waiting for me. One final mystery. The next morning, I met Detective Harris at the federal field office. He looked exhausted. Weeks of investigation had taken a toll on everyone, but his eyes carried something new. Hope, actual hope. It was the first time I'd seen it. He handed me a leather journal. Old, worn, damaged, Dr. Rowan's final journal. The last record of a man whose obsession destroyed countless lives. I opened it carefully. Most pages contained research notes, medical observations, theories, charts, numbers. Nothing that mattered anymore. Then I reached the final section. The handwriting changed, became messier, more emotional, less clinical, as if the writer were slowly losing control. I turned another page and found a passage that made my blood run cold. For years I believed I could correct fate. I believed intelligence could be preserved, measured, protected. I was wrong. The children taught me that. They became people, not data, not research, people. My hands trembled. I continued reading. Emma exceeded expectations. Lily exceeded expectations. Neither because of genetics, both because of love. The words stunned me. For the first time, Rowan seemed human, broken, regretful, almost remorseful. Then I reached the final entry and everything changed. The third child survived, the only innocent victim. I never told anyone. I couldn't. Now the truth belongs to her. She deserves that much. Below the entry was a name, one person, one answer. Grace Monroe. 3 days later, investigators found her. Not through surveillance, not through records, through something much simpler. A letter. A letter mailed weeks earlier. A letter addressed to me. One that never reached my home because investigators intercepted it during the kidnapping investigation. The letter was waiting in evidence storage, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the truth. I opened it. The handwriting was elegant, careful, gentle. The first sentence made my heart stop. Dear Silva, you don't know me, but I think I've been searching for you my entire life. Tears immediately filled my eyes. I kept reading. My name is Grace Monroe. I'm 23 years old. For most of my life, I've had questions nobody could answer. Questions about my adoption. Questions about my medical records. Questions about a doctor named Michael Rowan. Questions about a woman named Silva Landrum. The room disappeared around me. Only the letter existed. Only the words. Only Grace. The letter continued. Several years ago, I discovered documents suggesting Dr. Rowan secretly arranged my adoption after my mother died during childbirth. He funded my education anonymously, tracked my progress, observed my life from a distance. I never understood why, until recently. My breath caught. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Before his death, Rowan contacted me. He confessed many things, including one truth. You were never his experiment. You were his attempt at redemption. I stared at the page, confused, heartbroken, lost. The letter explained everything. Years earlier, Grace's mother had participated in a medical study connected to Rowan's research. Complications occurred, terrible complications. She died. Grace survived. Rowan spent decades carrying guilt, real guilt, crushing guilt, the kind that never leaves, the kind that follows you into every room, every dream, every waking moment. Grace wasn't part of the swap. She wasn't part of the conspiracy. She wasn't connected to the girls. She was simply the first life damaged by Rowan's obsession, the first victim, and the one he spent years trying to help afterward. A week later, I met Grace. I'll never forget that moment. Never. She entered a small cafe carrying a worn leather bag. Her hands trembled slightly, just like mine. For a second, neither of us spoke. We simply looked at each other, two strangers, connected by tragedy, connected by secrets. Connected by a man who spent decades trying to control fate. Then Grace smiled, a nervous smile, a genuine smile, and suddenly all the tension disappeared. We talked for hours about life, about family, about loss, about healing. Neither of us had all the answers. Maybe we never would. But for the first time, that felt okay. Some wounds don't fully heal. Some questions remain unanswered. Life goes on anyway. Months passed, slowly. Painfully, beautifully, the court cases ended. The investigations closed. The remaining conspirators faced justice. Aunt Vivian accepted responsibility for her role. The truth became public. Dr. Rowan's reputation collapsed. His journals were archived, his theories discredited. His obsession finally ended. But healing took longer, much longer, because truth doesn't instantly repair broken hearts. It simply gives them a place to begin. Rebecca and I became close friends. Closer than either of us expected. How could we not? We shared something nobody else could understand: the loss of years, the discovery of daughters, the impossible mixture of grief and gratitude. Emma began spending weekends with me, not because anyone forced her, because she wanted to. We baked cookies, watched movies, talked for hours, created memories, new memories, our memories, and Lily, my Lily, the girl I raised, the girl who entered my life 12 years earlier. The girl whose laugh could brighten any room. She never stopped calling me Mom, not once, not ever. And every single time she said it, my heart filled with gratitude. Because love isn't created by blood, it's created by moments, by sacrifices, by bedtime stories, by scraped knees, by hugs, by years spent showing up, again and again, and again. One evening nearly a year later, all four of us gathered for dinner. Me, Lily, Emma, Rebecca. The table was crowded. The kitchen was loud. Everyone talked at once. Everyone laughed. For the first time in a very long time, happiness felt natural again. Real, earned, beautiful. At one point, I looked around the room and realized something. The people responsible for the swap believed genetics mattered more than love. They spent years trying to control bloodlines, trying to manufacture outcomes, trying to play God, and they failed completely because despite everything they stole, they couldn't steal love. They couldn't erase memories. They couldn't destroy family. Family found a way. Love found a way. Truth found a way. Today I'm 35 years old. My name is Silva Landrum. For 12 years I believed I was raising my biological daughter. I wasn't. For 12 years another little girl lived only miles away. Neither of us knew. Someone tried to rewrite our lives. Someone tried to control our future. Someone believed children were experiments. They were wrong because children aren't projects. They aren't data. They aren't bloodlines. They're people. Beautiful, messy, extraordinary people. And if this story taught me anything, it's this. The family that loves you is just as important as the family that created you. Maybe even more. I lost a daughter. I found a daughter. And somehow, through all the pain, I gained a larger family than I ever imagined. That doesn't erase the heartbreak. It never will. But it gives the heartbreak meaning. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. So if you're listening to my story today, hold the people you love a little closer. Call someone you've been meaning to call. Forgive someone you've been meaning to forgive. And never underestimate the power of showing up for the people who need you. Because blood may begin a story, but love is what writes the ending. And after everything that happened, I finally got mine. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment. Tell me about the door that opened for you. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.